Hi, folks. Today I thought I'd talk a little bit about one of my favorite sayings. I'm sure you've heard me say many times before, and that is running is 80% mental and the other 20% is in your head. Now, when I say that running is 80% mental and the other 20% in your head, people, they kind of chuckle. They think that it's almost humorous. The fact is, I'm really pretty deadly serious about that. The brain is a really, really big deal because your brain, I think, even trumps your training. Now, that's not to say that training isn't important, because certainly training is important. And certainly it's not that you can just believe everything and it'll happen. I mean, I can believe until I'm blue in the face that I can run a 4 minute mile. I'm here to tell you, I'm not ever going to run a 4 minute mile. You couldn't put me on a treadmill on a 4 minute pace and have that happen. I couldn't train to that. So training's important, but really your brain is going to trump what happens with the training. So, as an example, to show you that, if you were to go and find 10 different coaches to write you a custom plan for your next race, all 10 plans would be different. There'd be some commonalities that they'd all be different. Well, how can they all be different? Because there's a whole bunch of different ways to train. And while training is really important, there's multiple ways to skin the cat. There's no one right or wrong way. But at the end, it's going to be what your brain is doing when you get into that race that really determines how you're going to do and how you're going to perform in that race. In fact, there was a study done not so long ago where they interviewed or questionnaire, if you will, a lot of athletes. I think these were in particular college athletes. And they asked them, what's the number one thing that you think you could do to be a better athlete? Number one answer was their mental approach to things. They recognized that mentally and how they looked at things was probably their biggest opportunity. They asked coaches, what's the number one thing your athletes could do to be better athletes? Their answer was also, it's the mental part of the game. But that's the least amount of time that they spend on everything. All their training is spent on, weightlifting and stretching and training and running, and those things are very important. But if the brain, if that mental approach, if 80-20 is so important, then shouldn't you be spending time on that as well? So I look upon the mental part. There's really two mental aspects to this, I think. One is that ability to push through the pain. And I put pain in quotation marks. I'm not recommending that you be running on a stress fracture or something like that. But we all know that in a race, it gets tough. And you want to slow down. Your brain's telling you can't do this. This hurts too much. You got to slow down. You can't breathe. So there's that mental aspect of how do I push through that that's important. And then the second element, I don't have a particular name for. It's that confidence. It's the belief in yourself. It's the ability to be able to run with joy. It's going out there and believing that I can do this. Because most of the times you can do better than you even think you can. So that's another second element of that. You can learn these. Both of them are learned skills, which is why I say just like you have to practice running and stretching and strength training, you have to practice some of the mental stuff as well. I'll give you an example. So a little over a year ago, I was at my nephew's wedding, and I made the comment to his mother afterwards. I said, I have never in my life seen a groom that was so relaxed and not like a typical groom. And she said, oh, that's because he's practiced that. Well, what it was is he was a hockey player. In fact, he was a goalie, and he was at fairly high level. He's never in the pros, but he is a fairly high-level goalie. And one of the things that he had learned was how to kind of get himself into the zone before a game so he could go out in that game and react just like that when that puck is coming at him, yet be very relaxed at the same time. And she said he had spent about a half an hour or so in a room all by himself prior to the wedding. Maybe it wasn't quite a half hour, a long time, getting into his zone because he had learned techniques that allowed him to get out there and be an effective goalie. And the same thing is true in running as well. So how do you learn those things? There's a variety of different things. There's a lot of different books that you can get on the mental approach to running. In fact, I'll show you one of my favorite right now is Deena Kastor, Let Your Mind Run. Now, it's really more about her biography of her journey in running, but the underlying theme in here is how she learned to run fearless, how she learned to run with joy in her heart, how she learned to take a run where she might have said, oh my God, this is hard, I can't do this. Say, wow, I must really be getting strong. This is really helping me. And was able to turn her mind and look at things a little bit differently. So, and there are many other books out there. How Bad Do You Want It? Endure. There's lots of them. So there are books that you can read that help you with that mental approach. There's a lot of different podcasts that you can listen to that talk about it. And there's coaches. There are people that's what they offer from a coaching perspective, is the ability to help you with your mind and do that. So there's lots of different resources that you have out there. But the bottom line is, when I say that running is 80% mental and the other 20% is in your head, I'm really very serious about that. And if you're serious about trying to be better in your running and being a better racer, if you're out there doing racing, then make sure you're spending just as much time, well, not just as much time, but spending time To train not just your body, you have to train your brain.